Trump calls for the death penalty of Democratic lawmakers who told the military to no longer listen to his command. A woman in the New York University streets has been assaulted for no reason. The MRI of Donald Trump has been released by the White House, and the Supreme Court has overruled the lower court on redistricting Texas in 2026, authorizing the map to take place. We have a lot of news to get to this week, so I'm just going to jump right into it. Trump calls for the death penalty of Democratic lawmakers who told the military to not obey his command. Is the death penalty really something that he should be calling for here? Probably not. I think this is too extreme. But let's begin by figuring out if this is and what the circumstances are. First of all, the death penalty is very different from calling for death. The media has been saying that Trump has been calling for the death of Democratic lawmakers. That is too broad, as death penalty, it's due process of the law. It is justice for those who have committed grievous crimes. Whereas calling for death is more implying to have, you're inciting violence and you're calling people to murder someone. So calling for death and calling for the death penalty are two very different things. Is the death penalty ever okay? Some people say that the death penalty is no longer acceptable. Some people think that we should have more death penalties. Some say we should go back to public hangings in the streets. The truth lies somewhere in between. It used to be in the medieval times, you didn't really have prisons and jail cells. You didn't have security cameras and all this technology that we have nowadays. You didn't have guns, so it was hard to contain criminals. So the death penalty was used a lot more back then for just reasons. Nowadays, with our technology and prison cells, it's really hard for a prisoner to escape these, so the death penalty is less necessary. It's only in extreme situations that it should be used nowadays. It can only be used in grave matter, and if the situation is extreme enough where they can't contain them. Trump is claiming that these Democratic lawmakers have committed treason by telling the military not to obey his command. Now, was it really treason, per se? I don't think it was treason so much as ignorance and stupidity of these Democratic lawmakers. They probably didn't really think about what the implications of this would mean. I don't think it was actual intended treason, so I think the death penalty would be too extreme for this. On top of that, the prisons they're very capable of holding a Democratic lawmaker in. I'm sure they're not very knowledgeable on prison escaping. In a sense, they did commit treason, though, because Trump, he is the president of the United States. The Constitution gives him power over the military. That's one of his main purposes as president. It's to make peace treaties and run the military. The Democratic lawmakers of states, they don't have control over the federal military. They do have some control over state military, which are state troopers, or I guess you wouldn't really call those military. Those are more policemen. But you have National Guard, who each state has its own National Guard army. But even the president has the power to take control of the National Guard if he needs to do so. So the president has sole power over all of the military, really. So these Democratic lawmakers saying that if you have a military soldier disobey the command of your president, then that would be treason because he's in charge of you. You're supposed to listen to his command. If the military doesn't listen to the president's commands, well, then they're fighting against the leader of your country, the representative of your country. They're fighting against your country. So, yeah, in that sense, it would be treason. However, as I said, I don't believe that that was the intention of these Democratic lawmakers. It was probably more out of ignorance because they claim that Trump is a fascist and orange Hitler. So telling the military not to listen to his commands, to them, is reasonable because to them, Trump is just a tyrant overreaching his power. So these Democratic lawmakers they probably believe that they're just fighting against a tyrant and not letting him do whatever he wants. Not so much intentional treason that should be punished by death. So to conclude, yes, Trump went too far in calling for the death penalty of these Democratic lawmakers. However, these people should be put in court and tried and even put in prison because it is quite serious to tell the military not to obey Donald Trump. Moving along, the White House has released the MRI of Donald Trump. It shows that he's in perfect health and his organs are functioning normally. There's not a whole lot to say on this topic, as you can look at the results yourself. They have been released, the official documents. It shows that he does not have any mental instability like the media likes to claim. That's why I find it important to note this, because the liberals try to claim that Donald Trump is mentally unfit or physically unfit for the presidency. Well, these results show that he is fit for the presidency. He's in perfect health. I mean, look at all that he does. When he speaks, you can tell he is mentally together. President Biden, we all know, was quite mentally ill, quite old. He couldn't walk, he couldn't bike, he couldn't do very many things. He would trip on staircases going up them. But the Democrats are going to say that Donald Trump is the one who's unfit for the presidency, when for 4 years they fought and said that Biden is perfectly fit for the presidency. I don't think the Democrats have anything to say. They have no room to talk on this subject. I mean, Donald Trump is in perfect health. So compared to Biden, he looks like an extremely young, healthy man. Now, the Texas 2026 redistricting map has been authorized by the Supreme Court. If you'll recall from last week, a lower court had determined that it was based upon racial discrimination. The Supreme Court says that it is political gerrymandering, and therefore the Constitution allows it. There is no law that says you cannot politically gerrymander. That's why it happens. That's why both Democrats and liberals do this. Meanwhile, in Virginia, the Democrats say, "Hold my beer." And they've redistricted Virginia somehow to turn... they have 6 Democrats in 6 Democratic seats, 5 Republican seats. They're proposing a map that's going to change that to 10 Democrat seats, 1 Republican seat. They're the king of gerrymandering. That's incredible. I didn't even know you could gerrymander so well as to push out practically all Republicans out of the House. I mean, Virginia almost elected Donald Trump. I think it was within like 200, 300,000 votes that Donald Trump would be, their electoral college would vote for Donald Trump. That is not a 10-1 state. No state is 90% Democratic. I mean, if I saw that coming out of California, I wouldn't be surprised, but even they're not 90% Democratic. They have Republican counties. So gerrymandering is turning this into a political gerrymandering war rather than votes. It's taking away the power from the people. This is why gerrymandering should not be allowed to happen. The Republican Supreme Court is not the reason for this, as the Supreme Court has no say over what should be and what should not be. The Supreme Court cannot create laws. There is no law, and the Constitution does not say that gerrymandering is not allowed. So the Supreme Court has to say that it is allowed. That's all they can do. If we had the Supreme Court suddenly say that gerrymandering is not allowed because we say so, well, then they just created a law. They're not elected, and so now they're the emperor of our... It's no longer a republic anymore. It's a tyranny or it wouldn't be a tyranny necessarily saying, but you get the point. It would be unelected officials. It would be like an aristocracy. These people who are unelected would get to say whatever they want. That's why the Supreme Court is not allowed to say... They're not allowed to create new laws. Only Congress is allowed to do that. So if we want gerrymandering to be outlawed, we have to go to Congress for that specific issue. We have to vote for people who will ban gerrymandering rather than for people who will continue to allow it. I find it very unlikely that gerrymandering will be banned because both parties benefit from it. So if one party gerrymanders, then the other party has to gerrymander. Otherwise, they're going to lose unfairly. So I don't see this unless the federal Congress can say, okay, no more gerrymandering. That's the only way I can see this happening because individual states, you have red states, you have blue states, you have some that are in between, but for the majority, they're red or mostly blue. So you're not going to have a red state say no gerrymandering, and while Virginia is flipping from 6-5 to 10-1, because then it would just be extremely unfair, which is why this has to be done at a federal level so that no one can do it all at once. And if the Democrats keep it up and they continue to be as good at gerrymandering as they are in Virginia, they're not going to want to ban that. It's their last hope for re-election. The polling data says that 30% approve of the Democratic Party, 55% disapprove. That's awful. That's worse than Trump's approval ratings. And all they talk about is Trump's approval ratings when theirs are in the dumpster. It's 30%. That's terrible. With 55% disapproving, it's not just a majority of people. It's not just a simple majority who disapprove of you. It's way more than that. Now, a woman, a student of New York University, has been assaulted in the streets unprovoked. You see this man run up behind her and slap her, push her to the ground, and then run off. This was caught by security cameras. According to ABC News, he was arrested on Tuesday, charged with sexual abuse, forcible touching, and assault. According to the NYPD spokesperson, this person had 16 prior arrests, including level 2 sex offender in 2023. First of all, this is ridiculous because Democrats allow this to continue to happen in cities. Their cities that they're running are overrun by crime. You don't hear stories like this coming out of deep red places. This is always coming from Democratic blue cities. This is ridiculous on multiple accounts. First of all, this is ridiculous because it happens over and over and over. Crime rates in cities are the worst, by far. Democrats run all of our big cities. Name one red city that's run with like 1 million people in the city. You know what I mean? Like Chicago, San Francisco, New York City, they're all run by Democrats. And they have huge crime issues. This happens all the time. This is not just a one-case thing. It's also ridiculous because he is allowed out after so many convictions. I mean, it said 16 convictions, including sexual abuse and burglary, and he's allowed out after every single one. He should be behind bars for life. I mean, he's clearly shown that he's not willing to change his ways. But they're probably going to sentence him for a year or two. He's going to come back out and he's going to do it again. And it's just going to keep repeating. This is what they do with all the criminals. The Democrats want to remove the police. They want to defund the police and get rid of prisons. And that's what's going to have this happen like exponentially faster, more. There's going to be a ton of crime, way worse if they're allowed to do that. This is why we need to elect Republicans to run these cities. It would be incredible to see the change within like a week if Republicans ran these cities. They would crack down on crime. They would enforce the law. They would have harsher punishments. Crime would go down overnight. It would be amazing if you elected Republicans, but they don't want to do that because the Democrats, as we've said before, are like a tribe, and even when the tribe's wrong, you stick with your tribe. I've heard people talk about failing red states, but what red states are failing like California's major cities and New York's major cities? I mean, there's way less crime in deep red states. You don't hear coming out of Idaho. Well, to be fair, no one lives in Idaho practically. A lot of people live in the big Democratic cities. So to be fair to them, there is a lot more people there and there's a lot higher chance of these things happening. But there are cities, there are not cities, but there are towns that have a large population that are run by Republicans. You don't hear huge crime issues coming out of those cities, or in the suburbs of certain cities that are deep red. You don't hear huge crime issues there. It's the cities, the counties run by Democrats specifically. Why is it that they have huge crime issues? You don't really hear of crime in anywhere else. It's because of their policies. The Democratic policies are what cause crime. The Democrats are treating these cities like they're Section 8 houses, like they're renting them or something. They don't really care. I mean, the new Democratic mayor of New York, Mamdani, I believe that's how you pronounce it. I mean, his first speech, what did he say? He said he's there to represent, and then he went on this list of a bunch of foreigners. He didn't even say American citizens. He didn't even say Democrats in New York, Democratic citizens in New York. He was specifically talking about foreigners, illegal immigrants. He's not there to represent Americans. That's why he doesn't care about all this crime and stuff. He cares about his foreigners. That's it. That's why this happens. Of course, if you elect someone who doesn't represent you or care about you, of course there's going to be heavy crime. Of course there's going to be economic issues and socialism and communism coming into your cities. They don't care. They're not going to stop it. They just are there for the foreigners. And the foreigners, they benefit from all crime. I mean, what's the biggest thing that foreigners benefit from? Illegal immigrants. They benefit from us not enforcing our border law, a crime. So these illegal immigrants benefit from no police, no jails, no laws. And if he's representing them, well then, yeah, he's not going to enforce the laws. So New York's going to have even more crime within the next few years, probably sooner than that because of this new Democratic mayor. Hopefully not, but that's what I see happening real soon. Now, Trump has signed an executive order authorizing smaller cars to be made in the United States, as well as cars that have a lower gas mileage. So less restrictions on manufacturing companies in America. He went to Japan and he saw all these cars there that were like really compact, really small. He said they're cute. We should have those here in America. They would have better gas mileage. They'd be cheaper. People would love them. So that's what he did. He came back and he signed an executive order allowing for those things to be made. I say this because there's people who have said, what has Trump done that's good for our country? Well, this is one thing. He's releasing restrictions on manufacturing companies. He's allowing the free market to work. And as we've seen through history, when the free market is allowed to work, then suddenly the country becomes very wealthy. There was this instance in Africa. There was two countries. I think it was Africa. There was two countries. One was on the shore, on the ocean side. One was more inland. The one that was inland was very wealthy. The one on the shore, very poor when they had all the resources. And it was because the one on the shore, very harsh economic laws. Suddenly they loosened theirs, and the country inland decided to crack down on the economy and seize control of it, and they flopped completely because that's how it works. When you have the economy, when the economy is ruled by a dictator, then it's not going to be very... You have the dictator making all the decisions. He can't make all the decisions for the economy, so there's going to be a lot of bad decisions made or things that are just neglected. Another thing that Trump has done is he signed an executive order that allowed our washing machines and dishwashers to use more water so that our dishes actually get clean. That was a big thing for me. I was like, I want my dishwasher and washing machine to work because Democrats signed all these executive orders that they made it so that the washing machines and dishwashers were restricted to a smaller amount of water in favor of our climate. But when your dishwasher is not cleaning your dishes, you run it again and again. And so now you're using more water. So that doesn't even work. But this is just some things to say that Trump has done that are good for our country to combat the people who are like, Trump's doing nothing. They don't know what they're talking about. I mean, if you think that Trump's done nothing good for our country, either you just really disagree with everything he does, or you are ignorant. It's one of those two options. A man named Enoch Burke, who is a Christian, has been arrested in Ireland. People are freaking out, saying that it's because he did not accept transgenderism. It's because he mispronounced students. But that doesn't seem to be the case after reading into the facts of this. The judge said, Mr. Burke has not been imprisoned or fined for his views on transgender issues, which he is perfectly entitled to have and to articulate. Mr. Burke has been imprisoned and fined for contempt of court because he has breached court orders directing him not to trespass on school property. You don't have to have a reason to trespass on your property. It's your property, so you don't have to give a reason for it. He was trespassed on the school property, and he came back again and again, and every time he was arrested for it. I'm not sure it was every time, but he was arrested for it, and he definitely has been in trouble with the law before for this trespassing because he has done it several times. So there's not I couldn't find anywhere where the school trespassed him specifically on a reason given, because they don't have to give a reason. But based upon the stories that I'm hearing and the news that I'm reading, the facts of the case, it would appear that he was trespassed because he said he did not use they/them pronouns for students. Because of this, the school probably fired him from his job. I'm not saying that for sure. This is just what it sounds like is happening. And they got a restraining order on him. And the court, after he kept coming back to the school, they arrested him and are charging him with trespassing. The court says that it's nothing to do with transgenderism. It's just because he's trespassing, and if he would stop trespassing, they would not have an issue. That's probably true. I think that's true. I think people are reacting to false rumors, but I think that their reaction is in the right place, just with the wrong facts. The fact is that the school is the one you should be angry at. They probably trespassed him because he didn't believe in their transgender nonsense. The court is just enforcing the law on restraining orders. So you shouldn't be mad at the court. You should be mad at the school. This is ridiculous that this is happening. It's insane that someone would lose their job because they misgendered a student. But it's not the court's fault. So we should shift our direction, our anger at the school instead. Because you see, the media, when they hear this story, they're going to be like, no, here's the facts of the case. It's not because of transgenderism. They're going to make us look stupid for it. And they're going to say, they're wrong. It's not transgenderism. Everyone look away. They're not going to look at it and say, this is the school you should be angry at. They're going to say, just don't look, people. They're going to dismiss it completely. So this is why we can't react immediately to false rumors. We have to actually look into the facts of the case before reacting. That way the media has no chance to say, everyone look away, nothing's happening, it's just false information, it's just misinformation. Because they're going to do that, I guarantee it. That was a good show. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I hope that you found my insights into the news topics helpful. I hope that you were able to better develop your own understanding and your own perspective on these situations using mine, instead of just taking my words and believing every bit of it. I hope that you can subscribe to my YouTube channel and faith that I am actually giving you the full truth and facts of the case with knowledge that is credible. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your week and have a good day. God bless.